Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Welcome to April's CX Experts Google Hangout. Today we are going to be talking about customer-centric culture, which focuses on nurturing and promoting the culture within your organization, and then developing practices and standards to get all employees contributing to that effort. So today we're joined by three fantastic experts. We have Diane Magers of AT&T, we have Jim Renbach, and we have John Carroll. Of course, I'm Drew Hall, and let's just dive on in and get started. The first question I wanted to pose to the experts today is about vision and values and direction. And what I want to talk about and have you guys chew on for a bit is what role do visions and values play in forming your organizational culture, and specifically, do those values, how do you align those values to a customer-centric culture if they're not? So does the idea of vision and values jump out to one of you guys, and would one of you like to get started? How about Diane?
Sure, I can speak to that. I think from a vision and value perspective, it's critical that it's defined. It kind of becomes a North Star for your organization. But I think also getting everybody to contribute to what that looks like for them is really important. So we've done some facilitation with employee groups that allow them to contribute to what the behaviors are, what they need to enable that value and culture, and how they want to create that. So getting their involvement was really key in helping them feel a part of it and take that ownership to kind of drive toward that North Star of where we're headed and what our values are and what our vision looks like for not only the company but for that experience as well.
Wonderful. So, as a North Star, is this, let's suppose we have a culture in our organization that isn't perfectly customer-centric, and our mission is to get this organization customer-centric. If the values aren't aligned, or if, in an organization void of values, we could come up with values and that would be great. But what happens in a world where those values don't seem to mesh with customer centricity? Or maybe they do, but those bridges haven't been built. How can you leverage those values to communicate with your employees? Does that make sense, John or Jim?
Yeah, I have some comments and just a tiny bit of context. So we're a founder-led company. Didier Truchot found us. It's our 40th anniversary this year, actually, and we just refreshed our vision and values, which I thought was interesting because Didier is still around. He's the founder, and just in the 40th year, we had a refresh. The one comment that I want to add, Drew, and maybe some of the other experts build on, that I found particularly with values and part of our refresh was that we moved from talking about customers in like customer-centric, which sounds really normal and sounds like, oh, that's a good thing, that's customer-centric, but is harder even just with those two words to act on, and we switched to customer-first. And just that word moving from centric to first, I think, at least for me and I think my colleagues, helps us understand, okay, so what are you supposed to do about that? Well, the value is you put the customers before our firm. And I know that sounds silly, but it really helps because customer-centric, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, maybe in the center, so everything connects to the center of it. It's not as easy to act upon, we found, because we did a lot of qualitative research inside of our organization to help us understand how people are acting on the vision and the values. And just switching from customer-centered to customer-centric to customer-first was really a big deal for us.
Yeah, I would say that there's one thing that keeps resonating. I've had the opportunity to interview several different leaders with my Fast Leader podcast, and Diane, you're one of my leaders that I had the chance to interview. And one of the things that keeps coming out when you start talking about mission and all of those is the word intent. And I'm hearing that more and more often kind of be that trust-building bond between, hey, this is what we're saying that we want to do and what we need to do, but we intend, or our intent is to, have this happen. And there's a framework that I've kind of seen being utilized by a lot of people, that the intent covers me, meaning I intend to do this. It covers we, we intend to do this. And then it could be, we as a way we affect or impact the world, and then the other thing being intent that we're going to leave as far as a legacy is concerned. And legacy, is going to mean different things for different organizations, as well as world, the we, and me. But a lot of people want to know, what is your intent? I mean, so even when we start talking about our voice of the customer programs, for example, what is the intent that we have with collecting it, making actions or taking actions upon it, using it as performance management? And that's part of the work that customer relationship metrics that we do a lot with, is trying to help people really break down and make that connection that Diane was talking about as far as that guiding principle is concerned, and really get to the intent. Because intent is more action-based, more so than, hey, this is what we want.
Yeah, so I think that's a great place to rest the concept of vision and values, that it's a guiding star. It's all about our intent, and it comes from the intellectual tiers of what you want your organization to do and where you want it to go. And so to change a small word like centric to first helps to bridge that gap between the intent and then acting on that intent. I wanted to talk a little bit, or I wanted to have you guys talk a little bit now about, so we've set vision and values, and we know they're going to guide us towards a customer-centric place. But on a more specific and more tangible level, now, let's suppose we've got our North Star out there and we know where we want the organization to go. Where do we then go inside our organization? Which department do we talk to? Who do we start working with to really pull these levers of change and nurture our culture? Can you guys give us some insight and some advice on who to build our partnerships with inside the organization? Are some departments more important to work with than others? That's my question. Does that, John, do you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all kind of, there's some amusing answers that we can give, and the legal department, Diane's probably leaving right now to go talk to her legal department. The whole legal department area just makes me laugh, because the funny thing is, you say in your organization that you need to talk to all the departments. I mean, that's usually the short answer for us customer experience folks. Where I think where I can add here is, I think that there's a right part of the organization to talk to at the right time. And my experience has been that you got to start off, like everybody is going to say, with chief executives in a top-down situation. And you really need to get people at the highest levels in the cross-functional really thinking about customer centricity and being customer first. And then once you get to the senior executive, we like to talk in the insight function to our folks that really can help you understand the customers. So it's a phased way of talking to the different departments in the organization. That's the marketing, the insights, the people that really talk to are responsible in the organization for understanding customers. Then we like to move from insight into action. And that's where we talk to frontline operations, people that actually deliver products and services into the organization. So it starts to spread much, much more widely into the organization. And then the last phase, embedment, that's where we got to talk to the hated HR, human resources, and really start mopping up the last bits of resistance in some of the legal functions, the finance function, and some of the other parts of the organization that probably aren't thinking immediately about being customer-centered. They might not interact with customers on a daily basis. They may not even be able to draw, connect that golden thread from what they do on a day-to-day work into, really what it means to be customer first. So I think the big thing, just to recap, that I'm adding here is, I think you got to talk to everybody in the organization. At the same time, there's a phasing by which you probably want to have a wave of becoming more customer-centric that starts with senior executives, goes more into the marketing side of things, then gets into the operations and really the broader staff, and then wraps up with human resources and making sure that all of the communication, training, education, competency building, all of those human resources processes are really connected into the customer-centric activity.
Sorry, go ahead, Diane.
No, that's great. I would agree. Executive alignment, of course, is really key. I would say in most instances, I've kind of started with HR. We're really exploring a lot about how the employee engagement piece and what employees are feeling and excuse me, how they go about their job is really key. So we brought them in because, especially in a large organization or any organization, it's hard to reach all those roles and understand where the struggles are. So we reversed that a little bit. We also got married, I'll say, to the finance team and the big data team, in addition to what John talked about, excuse me, because we recognized that we needed to leverage all that data, right? We needed to take that into insights, and we needed to bring the organization in to say, let their wisdom kind of guide what's that data telling us and where are we going. So we leveraged them. From the finance perspective, we really wanted to make sure that the business, the organization, executives to frontline understood what they do, how they make customers feel, the behavior of customers, and then the business results. We could show them that linkage and that they each had an impact on it. So we wanted to bring that kind of not only what's in it for me, but what's in it for the organization and for the customer value. So I'd add a couple, John, to that, those two additional where we really had to partner with them very closely to bring those messages to bear. And the last piece I would add is communication. We worked a lot with communication, but not in the typical sense, right? Communication is one thing. We worked with them to get to the point where we could define, is there understanding? So that was another component of kind of getting the communication there and getting the change management. It's one thing to kind of push things out. It's another to really say, was that understood and translated into the behaviors we were looking for? So I would add to John's great comment about where we kind of focused.
And for me, I'm a frontline guy. And one of the reasons I'm a frontline guy and really try to focus in on doing more of the bottoms up. So I'm one of those folks that wants to actually start where I have mass, and I also have evidence. So if I'm looking at the frontline folks, they can actually prove or disprove whatever we are attempting to do, and I have evidence, and it's often immediate. And I can tell you this: when you start talking about the effort that's being placed in trying to convince or persuade a senior level executive, it is significantly easier for them to move a particular direction when they have evidence. And so by gathering that evidence on the front line, you are absolutely going to have a significantly easier time to sell your thoughts, ideas, whatever it may be. So I'm a little bit different. I'm a bottom-up guy.
So I got to say, I think those three responses were the universe of ideas, and that's fantastic. John said go from leadership all the way across to HR. Diane said go from HR all the way back to leadership. And Jim said don't forget about coming from the bottom up. So I think those are some really powerful messages that it sounds like there's no one right way to nurture that culture. But you do need to have your data, you need to have your evidence, and you need to create those pockets of buy-in where you can, and then leverage that against the other. Go ahead.
Critically important point there is that there is no one right answer here, and what I find a lot of people doing is defaulting to something that is actually creating a significant amount of insanity for them, and that is benchmarking, chasing 1001 culture building ideas. I mean, that kind of activity is really wasteful. There are better frameworks that could be utilized in order for you to pinpoint the things that are going to work best for you. Just like we're saying right here, we had three different, essentially views or perspectives, and part of mine is because I came from, frontline contact center, managing and being part of that group and team, and knowing what the power of those numbers can actually do. Where Diane and John are bringing different perspectives as well. So there is no one right answer. That's part of what can make it so darn confusing.
Yeah, it's certainly, and that actually leads into the last thing I wanted us to discuss today, which is, so we're working to nurture a culture, and it's starting to happen, and we've got certain folks engaging and doing true customer-first, customer-centric building activity. How do we showcase these folks? How do we create the momentum with where it is working to then transpose that across? So not really where do we start, but once it starts, and let's even say you're lucky enough to be in a company that has that customer-first mentality, how do we showcase that? What are some ways to deliver that evidence that it's there? How do we do that? What advice could you give us?
Well, for me, I just had the opportunity to meet with my CXPA mentee last week, and we were talking about a framework for the different groups within their organization where she had to communicate her voice of customer type of results, and she had mentioned something about it being difficult for certain groups to get to the point where they can move past the doubt, and mistrust. Well, caveat this and caveat that with these numbers instead of moving to action. And I mentioned to her that one of the frameworks that I've seen work very well for a lot of folks is you really focus in on customer comments, the stories, and then the numbers. And then the mix can shift a little bit depending on the group that you're talking to, but be very diligent in regards to the way that you're communicating these things and connect with the heart before you try to connect with the mind. And make it a repeating process. And you're going to find, and what I told her, I said, build a dossier on the different types of groups that you have to connect with, because you're going to find what's the right mix, based on that. And because that's also going to be different if you're a service type organization, if you're a manufacturing type organization, that mix is going to shift a little bit. But always try to connect with the heart before the head.
I would agree with Jim. We use a lot of storytelling, and that's using those same components that Jim talked about and saying, here's what happened, here's what somebody did, here were the results of that. Because people find it, it brings the story to life, and it lets people really hear what's going on. It's one thing to present numbers and charts and graphs. We all do that pretty well, but it's really bringing that human element into it that people really resonate with and say, gosh, if that were me, right? If it was my mom, right, so to speak. We try to really make it heartfelt and bring those stories to life. So I love that, Jim, and we use that technique as well.
Yeah, I just build on that. Our experience is storytelling absolutely important. The heart before the head. Can't forget the old ROI models, though. I mean, and particularly as you move into real decisions that are going to have major financial impacts on the organization. So wouldn't want people to forget about, because you get that heart, and then people say, okay, now show me the numbers. So we can't forget about that. And then the other thing I'll add is, we're really competing. Anytime we talk about communication, Drew, we're really competing against all the other communication that are coming at people, all the other initiatives that are being run inside of an organization, all the other communications that are just coming to people, whether that for entertainment purposes or it's a noisy world out there. So I think when we talk about customer centricity and our initiatives to drive customer centricity and communication, we have to have our eyes, our ears really wide open to the experience of the recipient of the communication, and kind of like get real about what we're going to need to do to be able to cut through all of the noise. I had one of my clients that just blew my mind about how much the corporate safety, and this is an insurance company, and they don't really have, it's not a plant that has a lot of moving parts that are going to potentially hurt you, and that corporate safety people were on you day in, day out with a multimedia campaign telling you about how safe you had to be. And I think you need to kind of recognize what the flow of communication is that's coming into your staff, your employees, and even your partners, different levels, different roles, and then move to crafting your stories, as Diane was talking about and Jim was talking about, to hit the heart and the head, and focus on the media as much as that message, because we miss out when we're not using the techniques that are very modern that people are using. If you're not getting a customer experience measure that can, or message or story out through a mobile device, you're probably missing a lot of what people are looking at these days in terms of screen-wise. It's tough. It's hard. You got to use money for this, by the way. It's like it doesn't happen magically, and it's not for a lot of us. We don't have people on our teams that can use these new media, very, very easily. So.
Yeah. So that's perfect. I think all of those points about getting to the heart and the head, looking at what flow of communication is happening inside your organization, and then finding the right place to tell those stories. I think those are really insightful points that are going to help a lot of us as we go about our mission to transform our cultures. Let's do something. So I wanted to do something new for our last few minutes, there are only a few questions, but I want to go down the line and do sort of a rapid fire yes or no short answer responses. And these responses or these questions go to not the mature side, but let's say we've got a small organization, it's a small team. And so I've really just got 2 or 3 questions, and I want to go Diane, then Jim, then John. Okay, so yeses or nos. Can you transform your culture without the support of your executive leaders? Diane, Jim, John, yes or no?
No.
Yes.
No.
Wonderful. So I love it already. I like this format. Number 2, can you change and transform your culture with a team of just 1 or 2? Diane, Jim, John.
Yes.
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 Perfect. That's what I love to hear. And then finally, and you'll get to use more words than just yes or no, but can you give us 1 or 2 words of encouragement if we are in the position where our seniors are a little bit wary of the program and we're on small teams? Can you give us 1 or 2 words of encouragement to keep our head up knowing that we can make the difference? Diane, Jim, and John.
I would say, remember, it's all about habit. If you can't break the corporate habit, just keep pushing that rock up the hill and keep telling the stories.
Jim?
I would have to say go pee-pee, and that is, persuasion and practice.
Beautiful. John?
I'd say I'm gonna go to the top type of guy. Go to your executives, work your executives, and from there, you'll be able to get what you need to do to make it all happen.
Perfect. Thank you guys for playing along with that small little idea. We had that on last Hangout. We said, can we squeeze a couple more questions in before we're done? So with that, we're at the end of our time. Thank you, everybody who has joined in and watched. We will be having, again next month, our CX Hangout on the last Wednesday of the month. So be sure to join. This will be posted into the community, so share the link when you get it with all of your colleagues. And thank you again, Diane, John, and Jim. You guys have been wonderful participants today, and we will see you all next month.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.